So today we got a bit of a challenge on our hand. We're looking for the best budget enduro bike, less than $3,000. In order for it to be an enduro bike, that means it's somewhere between a 150 to 170 travel. I want decent enough part specifications, so drivetrain, brakes, stuff like that, to where you're not going to immediately have to do upgrades. And this bike has to be available to purchase and ship, because by the end of this video, I'm going to be buying my number one choice for this channel to do future riding reviews. So stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss it. So coming in at number 5 on the list is a Vitus Sommet 29 CR. This bike has a price tag of 2,699 pounds, which is roughly, if my math is right, about $3,023. I know I said budget bikes under $3,000, but this bike was so close, I just had to mention it, and it's the only bike on the list that has carbon anywhere on it. The frame has a T700 carbon front triangle with a 6061 T6 alloy rear. It's got a RockShox Domain RC29 fork up front, Select R rear shock. Now on the geometry, we're just gonna stick with the size large geometry when we're talking about each one of these bikes to keep things just a little bit simpler. So size large geometry on the Vitus Sommet has a head tube angle of 64 degrees with a 70 degree seat tube angle. So definitely has those modern angles in the geometry. However, the reach on this bike is only a 471, and I like to see a little bit longer of a reach for a size large, usually something a little bit more in the 480 range. So for me, I probably would have to step up to a size XL if I was going to get this bike. Now moving on to number 4 on the list, we got an absolute beauty with the Commencal Meta AM 29 that comes in this beautiful metallic green. This bike has 160 mils of travel in the rear, 170 mils of travel up front. For the fork, you got that RockShox Yari, which seems to be pretty common for these budget enduro bikes. For the rear shock, you got the RockShox Super Deluxe Select. You got the Shimano brakes and drivetrain, the E13 rims, and all that is brought to you at a bargain price of just $2,800, which definitely falls into that budget enduro bike range. But one of the big reasons why this bike came in at number 4 on the list is it still has 2 piston brakes and it comes with no dropper post. So like I said, I want a bike you're not going to have to upgrade, and a dropper post is not a cheap upgrade. So that was the Commencal Meta, but now it's time to get into the top 3 bikes on this list. Let's get into it. And coming in at number 3, we got the Specialized Status 160. This bike comes in at exactly $3,000. This bike has 160 millimeters of travel front and rear, which you might have guessed by the Specialized Status 160 name. And it's spec'd with a Fox Rhythm 36 fork up front with that grip damper. And it's also got the Fox Float X Performance rear shock that's got that piggyback on there, and kind of cool to see that piggyback on the rear shock in a budget bike like this. For the geometry on this bike, looking at the size S4, which is size large for Specialized, it's got a 63.7 degree head tube angle. It's got that flip chip on there, so you can reduce it by 1/2 degree, bringing that head tube angle down to an even slacker 63.2. It's got a 76 degree seat tube angle, a 487 reach, so definitely right into the reach numbers that I think you should have for a modern size large, somewhere in the mid to high end 480s. Now I was really close to pulling the trigger on this Specialized Status 160, but I didn't like the fact that this was a mullet bike. That was something I wasn't quite sure I was gonna like as my full-time ride, which brings us on to bike number 2 on the list, which is the Canyon Spectral 29 AL5. That could have been number 1 on this list, but unfortunately, it wasn't available at the time that I was filming this. This bike comes in at $2,899, and it's chocked full of awesome parts like the Fox 36 Rhythm fork with the grip damper, the Fox Float X Performance rear shock with that piggyback that I think is super cool to be able to get on a budget bike. It's got the Shimano Dior 12-speed drivetrain, the SRAM DB8 brakes, and a house brand Canyon handlebar and stem. For the geometry, this bike in a size large has a 64 degree head tube angle, a 76.5 degree effective seat tube angle, a 1252 overall wheelbase. So definitely got some updated modern geometry, and I've heard a lot of great things about the Canyon Spectral bikes, so I definitely want to check this one out. However, it wasn't available, which brings us to the number one bike on this list, and the bike I decided to purchase, drum roll please, the Marin Alpine Trail 7. Now this bike has some kind of similar spec components as other bikes on this list. It's got that RockShox Yari RC fork, 160 mils of travel up front, 150 mil travel in the rear with that RockShox Deluxe Select RT rear shock. It's got Shimano drivetrain and Shimano brakes. It's got some Flow Snap tires on there that I've heard some pretty interesting things about, and people actually said that they compare similar to like an Assegai style tire. The geometry on this bike is definitely something that I was interested in, with a 63.5 degree head tube angle and a 78 degree seat tube angle. So definitely pushing the bounds of modern geometry. I went ahead and purchased that bike. It's on its way right now. In future videos, you'll see the unboxing, ride, and reviews. Hey, if you guys made it this far, smash that like. It really helps the channel out. And watch that next video, because it's all about getting you guys stoked to go ride and have some fun, people.